Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to episode number 9 of Get Better at Yu-Gi-Oh! And today we are going to be talking about Effect Veiler and when essentially to use Effect Veiler against certain decks. Now, certain decks, it doesn't really hurt, them when you activate Effect Veiler because they just don't have that many targets that, you can really use Effect Veiler effectively on. So that said, we're going to go over a lot of the meta decks, and I'm going to tell you guys when is, the most appropriate time to activate Effect Veiler, but sometimes there's different things on board, and you can't always know exactly when to Effect Veiler, but this is generally going to be about the best time to activate Effect Veiler. So that said, let's get started. So first off, Dino Rabbit, this one's pretty simple. I mean, once you see a Rescue Rabbit on board, you want to Effect Veiler, because now without priority, Effect Veiler actually got a lot better, because without priority, Rescue Rabbit can't, dodge Effect Veiler. So yeah, basically, you want to be able to Effect Veiler Rescue Rabbit immediately. But when you do this, make sure you actually kind of have a follow-up play. Otherwise, your Effect Veiler might just be a -1. That said, Effect Veiler is also, live when your opponent has out a Logia, and let's say that next turn they go over Tour Guide, and you have a face-down Torrential Tribute. They go Tour Guide to bring out, another Tour Guide, and then they go for Levier. And they already have like a Logia out, and you have a face-down Torrential Tribute. Hey, you can just activate that Torrential Tribute and still chain your Effect Veiler's effect. When they activate Logia's effect, you activate Effect Veiler, and then they still lose their field. So you don't always have to, just blow Effect Veiler off immediately. If you have a follow-up play, like so, let's say you Effect Veiler, make sure you have something to follow up with to get rid of the Rescue Rabbit, because sometimes they might just protect Rescue Rabbit and then just use its effect next turn, and then you essentially lost Effect Veiler for nothing. So keep that in mind. If you maybe have Torrential Tribute and you don't have any monsters you can summon at the moment to get over Rescue Rabbit, that is available as an option. Next up, Elemental Heroes. Pretty much at the very beginning of the game, it's always Stratos. You can Effect Veiler Stratos, and sometimes it hurts them depending on how cloggy their hand is. If they have like Gemini Sparks and Hero Blast, those will be dead cards essentially until they get the Alias. But the thing is, they'll be able to add Alias usually within the next like 3 to 4 turns. But maybe if you're playing a slow deck, you need to get rid of that now, perhaps because you can OTK them. Or if you're playing like a slower deck, you might not be able to OTK them, so you want to do that. But yeah, if you can OTK them, yeah, I would say it's okay. You can just Veiler Stratos. It's not the end of the world. The only thing you can really Veiler effectively in the deck is when they go for Exceed monsters. So that said, like Blade Armor Ninja, or most popular like Excalibur, like a really quick play that a lot of hero players will do. They'll go for Excalibur, Detach 2, and then Miracle Fusion. And then if you Effect Veiler the Excalibur, you can prevent from pretty much losing almost all your life points. But that said, if you have a bigger monster on board and they go for Excalibur to run over you, it's phenomenally good because it puts them in a bad spot because they have a 2000 beater and they kind of like, use 2 monsters to make it. So if you were to have a bigger monster on board that can get over 2000, hey, that's awesome. But yeah, generally you can Effect Veiler Stratos. I mean, there's very few things in the deck that you can hit, so it might be a good idea to hit Stratos, depending on what deck you're playing again. You have to always remember that as well. Next up, the whole like Mermail archetype. You can actually Veiler Undyne, and that actually is very effective because the ability to just let them just send Dragoons or send whatever card they want. I mean, for example, maybe you have something on board that you want to protect, and the thing is, Undyne can just, basically pop face down, face up, basically if he sends either Atlantean Marksman or Heavy Infantry, so maybe you want to effectively that, depending on what you have on the board. Also, it's kind of good just to Veiler it, just because, again, once they send that Dragoons and they can add literally any Sea Serpent, it really gives them that ability to, make whatever they want, whenever they want, essentially. Like, you can add the Elemental or Molan Glacia, you can add Deep Sea Diva, you can add the Mermail Abyss Megalo. Like, there's so many options where UNDINE allows them to do, so sometimes it is good to Veiler that. Also, it's a great thing to Effect Veiler Deep Sea Diva. Going with the Undyne, most, like this card, Diva plus Undyne, these have relatively low attack, so usually you'll be able to get over it next turn, no problem. Next up, Dark World. Now, the thing with Effect Veiler versus Dark World, it doesn't really hit too much in the deck. I mean, if they're playing things like Tour Guide, yeah, it's great to hit Tour Guide. Some people don't even play Tour Guides in it, and then it's kind of bad. But, I would honestly suggest you to Effect Veiler if they have, like, Trance Archfiend. That's a card that you can hit with Veiler, and you can kind of use that effectively. But also you have to keep in mind, Trance Archfiend also has another effect. I want to just bust this card out right now. I want to show you guys its other effect. I should have put it in here. But yeah, it does have another effect. When this card you control is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target one of your banished dark monsters and add that target to your hand. So thing is, you have to keep that in consideration. Maybe that they have a banished Grapha and they'll just add it back. So you got to remember to watch out for that. But The thing is, I usually like to discard Effect Veiler when they go for Dark World Dealings. That's a very good option as well, just because Effect Veiler, you can't really hit too much. I mean, sure, you can hit a Tour Guide, but let's look at it this way. Tour Guide for them is basically just, you know, a Dark World. It brings out a Dark World monster, and then generally they'll just bounce back the Dark World monster for Grapha, and so Tour Guide's basically a 1300 with the field spell and just 1000 without. So it's not anything too threatening. However, if they have a banished like Snow or something, any Dark World that they can bring back with Levier, that's where it actually gets kind of deadly. So you kind of got to gauge, see if they have anything banished that they have a Levier play for, and then you might want Effect Veiler then. Otherwise, I would say Dark World, when they go for Dark World Dealings, Effect Veiler is, you know, just a card that you can discard because you're not going to be able to hit too much with it. Next up, 6 Samurais. Now, Kageki, if you're afraid of first turn Shan, obviously, you know, Kageki activate effect, and you say no, that means they can't really get out Kagemusha, unless they have, like, Dojo plus, like, Kizan's in their hand, then they can just get it out anyway. So if they play down like double Dojo and they go summon Kageki, you might not want to Effect Veiler that, because if they you know, have multiple Dojos and you know that they have Kizan perhaps, or you just suspect that they have Kizan. Most of them will play Kizan, but yeah, that said, then they can just go for it anyway, so you got to keep that in mind as well. But going back to the Rescue Rabbit thing, if they go for a first turn Shan and you have like Effect Veiler plus a Torrential Tribute, you can effectively use both those cards in combination, as long as you feel like you know, they don't have the ability to like MST or Torrential Tribute or something like that. Again, going back to that Rescue Rabbit play, once again, they would have, let's say, Xian out, and then you set like, just an example, you just set Torrential Tribute. The next turn they summon, you activate Torrential Tribute so you can blow up their Shin plus whatever they summoned that turn. They'll obviously use Shin's effect to negate, and then you activate Effect Veiler, and then Shin's effect is negated, everything gets blown up. So, very effective use of Effect Veiler in combination with like Torrential Tribute. There's a lot of ways to combo Effect Veiler as well. Next up, Temperance of Prophecy. Going back to like the High Priestess, the Spellbook archetype, because the deck is a little bit popular. Sometimes it's difficult for them to get out High Priestess. Like, it takes them a few turns. I've noticed that, unless they're playing like Temperance, or they're playing the other card that searches out Temperance. But that said, you can Veiler Temperance. Temperance only has 1000 attack, so it's not, you know, too threatening to, you know, just leave on the board. You usually can run it over. But yeah. You know, if it does survive, you're going to deal with it, and you're going to go more minus. But yeah, I would say, you know, High Priestess, it's a good card to Veiler as well. I mean, this is pretty much their version of Hyperion. Next up, Chaos Dragons. Now, the thing with Chaos Dragons is there's so many ways to play it. I mean, some people play Judgment Dragon, some people don't play it. Depending on what they have, you have to kind of like look at the field and kind of decide what you want to Effect Veiler. I think the most effective way is, if they already have like the Red Eyes Darkness Metal and they're gonna like bring back Light Pulsar, that's a really good time to Effect Veiler, as long as you can follow up with it next turn. Keep that in mind. When you Effect Veiler, make sure you can follow up with it, because let's say they have a Red Eyes Darkness Metal, you still have 8,000 life points, then they're gonna go for Light Pulsar, and maybe that you have something else that can get over Red Eyes next turn, then yeah, that's great. But if you don't have something that can get over Red Eyes, or, you know, Light Pulsar, you might not want to Effect Veiler, you know, whatever they're really doing. I hope that kind of makes sense to you. I know it's a little bit confusing with the way I'm wording it, but my English is bad. But what I'm saying is, basically make sure you have a follow-up play. Like, if they go for Red Eyes, and they activate Effect, and you can't get over Red Eyes next turn, what they're going to do is they're just going to go for Red Eyes again. So make sure you can follow up with it. I mean, of course, if they're going to go for Red Eyes to get out Light Pulsar and that would attack you for game, yeah, of course you want to Effect Veiler, otherwise you would lose. But yeah, make sure you have a follow-up play. Next up, the Girgas. I mean, basically you want to like negate Girga armor when they flip it. Because, you know, that's the most effective way. If you think that they, you know, if they go for that Girga, or what is that? It's cool. I've been playing Girgas. It's, what is it, Girga Arsenal. So if they go for, like, Arsenal, and then they, like, go for Armor and set Armor face down, and you have Effect Veiler, they're going to flip it next turn, so you might as well let them flip it, and you can Effect Veiler it. That way they can't reset it, and usually you can run over it next turn, because he's got low attack. So again, going back to the point of, you got to make sure you can follow up with it. The thing is with Girgas, they run a lot of deep prisons back row, so keep that in mind as well. Next up, windups. Now you really have to gauge the field and see what they have, because if they have, like, windup factories and stuff like that, the thing with Factory, I do want to mention this, because this is important. So let's go to check out Windup Factory. So if an effect of a Windup monster is activated, see, Effect Veiler makes it so it negates the effect, but it still technically activates. And that's a big ruling that you guys should know. If you don't know, this is very important, because technically it is still attempting to just activates. It doesn't have to resolve, just has to activate. So that's important too, that you guys need to take into consideration when you're using Effect Veiler. I mean, if they're going to go for, you know, a Shockmaster and you have like a Torrential Tribute, hey, as soon as Shockmaster gets someone, just Torrential them. But you have to kind of gauge and see what they're going to make. It's really tough to know what they have in their hand, unless they, you know, of course, used Factory to add whatever they had. You got to, you know, kind of look at the field and see when to Effect Veiler. Usually when they go for the Zen Mighty play, like if they just like quickly try to go for Rat and Zen Mighty, you can just Veiler the Rat. You can Veiler Zen Mighty if you want them to just like have no Zen Mighty, because Zen Mighty is the card that kind of allows them to, you know, really push and get a lot of stuff on board. So yeah, you gotta remember that too. With windups, it's kind of one of those decks where you kind of gotta look at the field. I can't really like give you a perfect example, but I mean a really simple example would be like something like Wind Up Rat. Is it wind? I think it's Wind Dash Up. Let's go check it out. Yeah, it's Wind Dash Up Rat. So yeah, so you can target one wind up monster in your graveyard, change this attack position to defense position. So you just be like, nope, I'm leaving that. You're gonna leave that 600 attacker in attack position, so that's really good because you could usually just run over it. But keep in mind, again, you got to follow up with it because this is a once per turn. Well, it's during your main phase you can target one, so yeah, keep that in mind as well. That if you don't follow up with it, you know, right now it's just gonna be like, oh, it's cool, let me activate its effect. That said, let's see what else. Gravekeepers, you know, that's still a relatively popular deck, I would say. I always see it once in a while. The thing is, they always set Spy, so if they try to flip Spy, you can Effect Veiler Spy, but most commonly is they'll go for like Descendant, and they'll Tribute one, and you can Effect Veiler that. That is one thing you can do. There's very few things you can really hit in Gravekeeper, so Descendant or like Spy, if you have the opportunity to do so, is good. Next up, like Monarchs in general, I mean, Caius is probably like the most, I'd say this card probably hurts the most. It's probably one of their best cards. It's probably one of the best Monarchs in general. But yeah, Veilering him is good. And then also, I wanted to mention, any like Sea Lancer, if you Veiler Sea Lancer, that hurts them a lot more. So if they're playing Lancer Monarchs, let the Caius play go through, worry about the Lancer, because that is the card that you need to get rid of. Otherwise, they're going to spam rank 2 exceeds it all over again, and they're going to kick yourself later on if you Veiler Caius and then a Lancer comes out. But if you already have like, you know, a lot of control on the board, and you want to, you know, negate the Caius because they're going to get rid of your Stardust or something like that, hey, you know, that's definitely an option as well. Again, these aren't always like the perfect times. It's just on average, these are going to be like, you know, pretty good for, you know, most of the situations. But depending on what they have on the board, what they have in their hand, what you have in your hand, you have to remember that too. It could be totally different. Next up, you could also Veiler Swap Frog. That also is an option because if that is if they normal summon it. If they special summon Swap Frog, then you might not want to do that. But yeah, if they just normal summon Swap Frog and they want to try to send Treeborn to the grave, depending on what deck they're playing, like Lancer Monarchs and regular Monarchs are different. Lancer Monarchs, I've seen some not even play Treeborn. But yeah, if they're trying to send Treeborn, you know, it's good to Veiler it sometimes because sometimes you can just like overpower Frogs because Frogs basically have one summon, no back row. So it's pretty easy to OTK them sometimes. But they do play Battle Fitter, so again, you got to remember that. Maybe if you have a Solemn Warning, you know, set, you can just, you know, Warning the Fader and just OTK them. You know, that is an option. Next up, plants. Going back to being able to follow up with something. So let's say, for example, you Effect Veiler. Like, let's say they summon Debris Dragon, they want to go for Dandelion and maybe blow up the field or something. Yeah, you can Effect Veiler that. But maybe if they already have 2 tokens, maybe you want to make them commit more to the field and then Solemn Warning or then Effect Veiler because you think that they're going to make either a Scrap Dragon or they're going to make something else that you can Effect Veiler more effectively. Then yeah, wait for that. And also, yeah, if they already have the tokens, sometimes with plants, though, even if you Veiler them, they can still try to make something by using enemy control, or they can just do a lot more stuff. So don't be angry that if you use an Effect Veiler on plants, or any deck that can swarm really hard and they just happen to have like Monster Reborn anyways. Yeah, keep that in mind, it just happens. Don't kick yourself for activating Effect Veiler kind of at the wrong time versus certain decks that can have, like, you know, for example, multiple Keyzons or something like I mentioned earlier with like the dojos where if you Effect Veiler Kageki and they already have multiple dojos out and then just go, okay, it's cool, go for multiple Keyzons, and at that point your Effect Veiler, it doesn't really help because they still get out that Kagemusha, which is the card you're essentially trying to stop from coming out. Next up, Grand Soul Psychics in general. There's, what is that, is it, no, it's not Overdrive Teleporter. It's, Mind Master, is that the one? No, that one got banned. It's the one where you tribute 1,000 and then you swap control. That's the one you really want to, Effect Veiler. It's Jumper, that's what it is, okay. There it is. So once per turn, you can pay 1,000 life points and select one face-up monster your opponent controls and one psychic monster you control, except for Psychic Jumper. And then you basically, it's basically like kind of like a creature swap, basically. But they'll give you some monster that can get out another monster. But the thing is, usually this card becomes an attack position. Like sometimes I've seen a lot of them normal summon it. So when they normal summon it, you know, it only has 100 attack, so it's very easy to run over. But yeah, that would be an option against like Grand Swell Psychics. Although the deck hasn't really been too popular. I haven't really seen too much of it in the last couple weeks. But that said, next up, Lightsworn. The thing is, you gotta really kind of see how many cards they have in the graveyard. Maybe you don't want them to like Lumina Garoth and then like draw a bunch, potentially. So yeah, you can Valor then, or you can wait for a Judgment Dragon to come out and you can Valor that. Also, one thing I wanted to mention, this is kind of good if you're playing against Lightsworn. So let's say that you have Zenmains with 2 attachments on the field, and you know that they only have 1 Judgment Dragon. What you can do is, when they summon Judgment Dragon and activate its effect once, you could just say, sure, that's cool. And then you detach 1 attachment with Zenmain, and then they go activate effect again. And then you effect Valor, because now they'll just attack you. You can detach 1 more, and during the end phase you can blow up their Judgment Dragon. Because if you effect Valor immediately, sometimes they'll just be like, that's cool, I'll end my turn and I'll wait for next turn, and then they'll attempt to OTK you next turn. So that's important. Remember, paying the 1,000 life points is a cost. So going back to another card that has a cost, if you effect Valor, it would be like Venus. So even if you effect Valor, they still have to pay that 500 life points or the 1,000 life points with Judgment Dragon. Yeah, so you can effect Valor Venus relatively easy, but depending on what deck you're playing, again, like the thing with agents is, you know, if they already have like, you know, multiple fairies, you gotta watch out for that Christia, because you might want to effect Valor Christia on their turn, and then you can drop a Gorz or something, because Christia really shuts down a lot of the meta. So keep that in mind. They can always have like Christia and also Hyperion. That's another card you gotta look at too. I mean, Hyperion, even if you effect Valor, he's got large attack. So again, going back to my main point of emphasis, which was like you have to be able to follow up with the next turn, otherwise your effect Valor didn't really let's see, it didn't really have the most potential out of the card. Whereas I mean, if you're gonna like lose from like again like that Red Eyes getting back Light Pulsar, of course you gotta effect Valor. But you know, you can get a lot more out of effect Valor than you would think, especially with the Torrential Tribute. That's just a really simple way that you can effectively use you know, effect Valor pretty much in a different way that a lot of players just haven't seen. Because I've seen a lot of players lose to 6 Samurais when they have Torrential Tribute, when they could have totally just activated Torrential, Shane would have tried to negate, and then you would have effect Valored it. I see that all the time, and you know, it happens. 6 Samurais is a pretty strong deck still. I mean, if it goes first, it goes bam, bam, bam. It's, you know, 6 Sam Uniteds. It's just, it gets pretty crazy. But yeah, I hope this helps you guys out, kind of understand how to use effect Valor more effectively, because it is a pretty good card and it does shut down certain decks. I think there's a few decks we didn't cover, but those ones were pretty simple, I would say. Like, for example, like Dragonides. Obviously, you do it Dux or a Legionnaire when it has like Achilles or Achilles in the graveyard. Inzektor, you know, Centipede, Dragonfly, if they have that. Like, there's just, you know, most of those are pretty simple. But yeah, these are just these are more of the meta decks, I would say. Like, I haven't really seen Inzektors in a while, to be honest. Going with that, like the whole like Grand Swell Psychics, basically like once like, you know, the top players like, you know, Billy Brake, Jeff Jones, a lot of those players, when they top with a deck, you'll see it for a few weeks, unless it's like a super top tier deck. Like I think Merman Atlanteans are probably one of the most popular decks at the moment. The deck will kind of slowly die down unless it's continuously topping. But yeah, but that said, I hope this helps you guys out. If you guys want to check out episodes 7 and 8 of Get Better at Yu-Gi-Oh! They'll be in the description box as well as in the annotations. That way you could, you know, kind of learn more about the game, because I'm still learning a lot about the game every day when I play, and that is the awesome thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! There's so many things to learn about this game, and mechanics and stuff, and rulings and stuff like that. Like I mentioned with that factory, I know that that costed me the game, because I was like, oh, I'm effect veiling it, but remember, it's as soon as it's activated, effect failure does not negate the activation, it just negates the effect. So a lot of those little rulings definitely change the game completely. But yeah, hope this helped you guys out. Check out the other videos if you would like to. I'll put them in the description as well, so you players are playing on like maybe a tablet or something and you can't click on annotations, it'll be available for you in the description box. But thanks for watching, guys. Have a good day. Asian Sweat Dragon signing out.